Good morning and welcome to Center for Spiritual Living Palm Desert. We are All for One, and I am Dale Olansky, and I am here with Gail Morton and Cheryl Guess, and I know that William Conway will be materializing very shortly. We have a wonderful program for you today. Our beloved Cheryl is going to be leading us in a fantastic discussion about the duality inherent in beauty. And isn't that provocative? I cannot wait to see what she has to say today. So before we begin, let us do a prayer just to center ourselves and begin this wonderful experience together. So I invite you to close your eyes and just relax into your space wherever you are right now and just breathe into what is unfolding for all of us. I'm so grateful to recognize that there is only one thing happening, and that is the expression of spirit by means of all. Knowing in my heart there is only one power, one presence, one source of life that is everlasting, that is joy, that is peace. And I know that that one is expressing by means of everybody here today, everybody who is watching, everybody who is giving questions, everybody who is speaking. This is one opportunity to be curious, to open up to new ideas that are transformative and enlightening, and just allow ourselves to look underneath what is coming up for us, to see how we are that power and what we can do to embrace it and to live from it, and to open our minds up to the vast, inexhaustible opportunities to be more of who we are and to see the power that lies within ourselves that guides us rightly all the time. And so knowing that as we come together today, everything is unfolding absolutely perfectly. And I feel so blessed to be here, and I bless everybody who is a part of this conversation. And so knowing that all is unfolding perfectly, I just let go and let it be, as we say together, and so it is. Well, again, good morning, everybody. As we do to begin our show, we have a question that we all answer that just gives you a little insight into who we are and what's important to us and how we see reality. And the question that Cheryl posed to us today is this. Describe a beautiful time or a moment in your life. And to me, I see so much beauty every single day of my life. And beauty is just a natural part of spirit, and it's a natural part of every aspect of life. It isn't just about the physical parts of life. It's also about the parts inside of our hearts, the way that we're seeing life in our experiences. So there's beauty in just the grace of living. But I did have a physical experience of beauty yesterday because for those of you who may not know, we live in a desert, and most of the time it's very hot here. And we've been having some great weather lately. And yesterday we had rain, we had wind, we had clouds. And I just sat out in my yard and I watched these beautiful clouds going overhead. My trees were blowing, and it was just such an extraordinary moment of experiencing the beauty of life through nature. And that was just so wonderful and meaningful. It just filled my soul up, which beauty to me really is something that's soul fulfilling. So that's my share for this morning. Reverend or Gail, I would like to toss it over to you. Talk about your beautiful experiences.
Oh, thank you, Dale. And I really enjoyed hearing about yours. So, I would say that the most beautiful moment in my life is the moment when my first child was born. And really more specifically, when I first laid eyes on her. So I believe this moment was impactful when I think about it for a lot of reasons. So I do believe that we're all born wired for connection. And what greater gift than connection with a child? And becoming a mother for the first time also marks an incredible and powerful rite of passage. There's this amazing buildup from separating from life as a childless woman, moving through that liminal space where this child is growing and expanding in my body. And I am spiritually and emotionally expanding into a new mother. And then in culmination, the work that's done, both physically and emotionally, to move across this threshold into that space of incorporating my new status as a mother, as I first laid eyes upon her. So yes, for me, that was a most beautiful moment. So thank you for letting me share. And now I'm going to move it on to Cheryl.
Oh, Gail just took my moment, but that's okay. If you become a mother, there is something that just it's like from 1 minute, from the moment before they're born until the moment they are, that you're just like a totally different person, and you start feeling so many different things, like she said. But one of the reasons why that was so beautiful for me was that I was adopted, and that was my very first blood relative, was my daughter when she was born. The very first time that I could look at somebody and say, do they look like me, or do they have my feet, whatever. And both of my children, and I felt the same way about my son as well, but both of my children don't look at all like me. So it's just like, okay, this is the way the universe was, preparing me for just to be within myself, and just to know myself, that whoever I am and however I'm expressing physically doesn't need validation by knowing that I am connected to someone else. But it is a very odd feeling to know that there is really no physical connection, even though you might be present in that moment. But the beauty of it for me was just to have something that was part of me. And that sounds very self-serving, but just to see another life just take form, and then watch them as they grow and everything. And every time, you just like so totally amazed with these little creatures, what they come up with and the way their minds work, and just all the different things. Like one of my favorite times with my daughter was, we were sitting in the car and a Hostess cupcake truck pulled up next to us. And she just looks over and she sighs, and I said, what are you thinking? She said, wouldn't it be cool just to have a job to drive around a Hostess cupcake truck all day and eat cupcakes? And that's what she thought was what a guy did as a Hostess cupcake guy. He was just driving around in his van all day long eating cupcakes. But it made me laugh so hard, because of the way that's what I guess I'm talking about today, is the way our perception forms our lives. And so I'm going to now turn it over to William and let him tell us about the most beautiful time or moment in his life.
It's really funny how we're talking about family and family moments, because that's exactly what I was going to talk about. However, mine's a little bit different, coming from the standpoint of a blended family. And the time was when both my boys came up to me, more so Dylan instigated it, but he came up to me and with a very serious look on his face and goes, do you think if Elizabeth would mind if I call her mom? And I thought to myself, that's beautiful. Mm-hmm. To have, in this day and age where I get the sense that relationships and families, there's not the importance of a vow there, in the sense that it seems like we've become a disposable society. Everything's thrown away. If I don't like something today, I'm just going to get rid of it. There's not this, and I'm not saying staying in a relationship that's harmful or not good. But I'm talking about the flippantness of just stopping something because it's a little bit difficult. Heck, if the four of us stopped something because it's difficult, we wouldn't be where we are today. But getting back to the most beautiful time. So the idea that my two sons, who were grown up at the time, came to me with that thought, that they had that much love for this person, that title means something to them. And believe me, Elizabeth was very honored at the fact that they wanted to do that. And of course, she graciously said, of course, because in her heart, she already felt like a mom to them. So I love the fact that in this day and age, when things are blended in stuff, it's just wonderful that at any time, a family can be created out of love. And so with that, I'd like to turn it once again back over to Cheryl and let her guide us for this next hour. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you, William. And thank you, each and every one of you. And even though we all kind of went through that family thing, but that's where we find our beauty, and that's where we see beauty in nature, in our families, in the entire world. But the title of my talk, which is kind of like Dale said, a little provocative, and I was hoping it would be, it was the duality inherent in beauty. And when I say duality, because beauty is a judgment. It's not a negative judgment necessarily, but it still is a judgment that that this is what's inherent in it. When you define beauty, you by default define ugly, because it's the opposite side of the same coin. Anything that's beautiful to you, then you have described and you feel like this is what it is. So then you just turn it around and you look, then by describing this is what I find beautiful, then if it's not that particular thing, then it's described as ugly or it's not beautiful. So it's the same thing when we define good or we define bad. It's not just good and bad. It's the opposite sides of the same coin. So sometimes when we define things that occur in our life as bad, they might actually be something that we need to grow. There's an opportunity for growth whenever this bad thing shows up. And plus, how would we know what is good if we didn't experience what we define as bad? That's the difference in what I'm saying about the opposite sides of the two coins, of one coin. So the two sides of one coin. So, but we live in a quantum universe, and we know that it's all just one energy. One energy. There's no split. And so there is no duality inherent in the universe. It's just eternal. It just is. And so it's like a magnet where you have the opposite sides, where one attracts and one repels. And that's how a quantum universe exists. Electrons being negative and protons being positive, that they have this relationship where they repel just enough, but still remain part of the whole. And so when you think about life that way, when you're trying to define something as bad, you have to step back. And is it really bad? Or is it just something that you perceive as bad? I mean, a lot of times the things that happen in the world, we see it as bad depending upon our perception. And so we have to sometimes step back and look at the bigger picture rather than staying just straight thinking into our perception of something, because we really do ourselves a disservice when we don't allow ourselves to look at life in a different way and different, attitude about things. And so if you think about it, there really is no duality. It's only a misperception of separation that we perpetuate. So like, for example, sometimes when we'll say, oh, well, it's all good. Well, if you're walking through something really difficult, maybe you don't feel like it's all good in this moment. But what you have to do is, if you step back and see what is the progress in your life and what's unfolding in your life, sometimes that you can just see that, yeah, it's not appearing to be good, but in the long run, it will be. It will just unfold naturally in perfect divine right order. So if we perceive source as to be undifferentiated energy, in other words, source doesn't sit and say, this is good, this is bad. It's like a daisy and a daffodil. They don't sit there and the daffodil doesn't think, I'm prettier than the daisy, and the daisy doesn't think, I'm uglier than the daffodil. They just be. They just exist. They just are. And so the only place, and this is the interesting thing, the only place that we find judgment in the world is in the human mind, in the human being. Animals don't judge each other like, I want that girl because she's prettier than that one. They just exist. They're just in the perfect flow of divine harmony without judgment. And that's, to me, is just, it's just, they don't see ugliness. Nothing else in the world sees ugliness. They just see it as just unfolding as life and as the universe should unfold. So from Do You Quantum Think by Diane Collins, Sacred Wisdom Sacred Wisdom teachings tell us the cause of suffering is separation. And that could be whether it is a separation from one another, from our purpose, or from a unified field, or from the source of creation. So when we create duality, we actually separate ourselves. And it's like when I first started going to this center, one of the things that really struck home for me, totally struck home, was the fact that there is no evil. And if you think about it, it makes absolutely total logical sense if you're in the quantum thinking area. In other words, for there to be a separate power would mean that the eternal, as I say, Tao, the eternal spirit, is not eternal, because when you have a separation, then it's not one continuous flow of being eternal. So, and plus, the other thing that was for me, why on earth would spirit create an evil power to chase and to cause harm or whatever to this creation, to his creation, which is his children, his family, as we've been talking about, that we are divine expressions of God, here to, just manifest, as I say, to show God a good time. That's my purpose on this planet. Now, however that unfolds, used to it would be, oh gosh, everybody's, everything's coming against me. Everything from outside is hitting me, everything is bad. And so, but then when I stepped back, or when I started realizing that everything that is appearing outside of me originated in here, somehow, in some form. Sometimes I'm not even aware of it. But then the other thing to think about is sometimes when you put a prayer and you put your prayer out there, and I've had people say this to me before after doing work, doing spiritual counseling or whatever, they just say, well, it's like I did this prayer, then my whole life just fell apart. Everything started just like breaking up and, going in different directions, and everything I was depending upon. And I said, well, then you must be going through a major growth spurt, because you got a lot of things to clean out to prepare yourself for when this prayer unfolds in perfect divine order. But sometimes there's things that are blocking us and keeping us from our good because of the fact that we are not cleaning out our closets. I mean, I have the most major junk drawer in the world. It's huge, but it's things that, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with it, or if it's, whatever. But the reality is most of this is something that I need to clean out, just like I need to clean out things in my heart in order to open myself up for new and exciting experiences. And so just to close this down is, what if we perceive the one source as perfect and everything that is happening in our lives as perfect? Now that's a major mind shift right there, major mind shift. We've been taught all of our lives that bad things happen to good people, and that, bad things are just part of life and all of this other stuff. But maybe it's just a time for us to step back and look at the bigger picture. So anybody else who's going to go after me? I'm sorry, I haven't kept up. Dale, I believe.
This is right, Gail, and I just wanted to acknowledge, Cheryl, thank you so much for a powerful introduction. And as we begin our sharing, we actually have one of our guests that has asked a question. So I want to read that so everybody can hear it, and then invite my cohorts if they'd like to address this question with their comments, or address it as we go along. So the question is, and we thank you very much for it, cannot the experience of beauty be beyond duality? So I'll now invite anyone to jump in if they'd like on that specific question, or if they'd like to just fold that in to their comments. That would be wonderful as well. And again, Gentle Civilian, thank you for your comment.
Well, I could jump back in. Why not? It's not saying that you can experience beauty beyond duality. But what I'm talking about when I say this is that to define it is to make a dual assumption. If you're defining it as beauty, then you're defining it as not ugly. In other words, that's the default mode. If you're defining it as ugly, then you're defining it as not beautiful. So yes, you can experience beauty, but just remember, it is your perception, what you have defined as beautiful, what you have defined as not beautiful, by defining it. And that's the crazy, it's like trying and not trying. Effortless action without attachment to the outcome. That's what trying. So in other words, when you're trying, you're just putting the effort in. So it's not necessarily that's not exactly what you need to do sometimes. You don't need to make it effort. It just unfolds at times. And so it's like effortless action. So whenever you're doing something, you're taking an action, it shouldn't feel like it's an effort. It's just being part of the universal flow and just taking action in that form without attachment to whatever the outcome is. In other words, if something is going on in your life that's really not pleasant, can you just let go of what the outcome is going to be and just let it just flow and let it unfold in just divine right order? But if it's also something beautiful in your life, can you also just step back and just live in that moment of that beauty that is coming from your perception? That's what I'm trying to describe here. It's not that this is absolutely, you can't define this without that. You can, but by defining anything, you automatically define the opposite. I hope I think I'm coming across a little clearer. Is anybody else ready to jump in here? Please, I'm swimming out here.
I'd be happy to jump in.
Thank you,
Cheryl. Absolutely. So, what I'm hearing and what I'm thinking about, what this has really prompted for me is, the term duality versus the term separation. And I loved how Cheryl talked about separation from spirit and our spiritual mind treatment. So generally, when we provide a spiritual mind treatment, which of course is our primary healing tool, what we desire to accomplish is to heal whatever separation is being experienced from the perfection of spirit. So really what I'm saying is that anytime we do a spiritual mind treatment, the reason behind it is always the same. It's to heal separation. And when I say the perfection of spirit, I'm talking about be it financial, relationships, health, creative expression, and spirit in this sense, not being good or bad. Spirit simply being all that is. It is both you and me that, as Cheryl said, that place a definition on good and bad, because this definition is solely a matter of our individual perception. So I love this example and I'll share it with you. Really made a lot of sense to me. So when a baby bird falls out of a nest before it can fly, the mother deems this as bad. And then a beautiful yet weary doe comes along, desperately searching for food, and sees the bird lying on the ground. It sighs, this is good. Nourishment for my fawn. Her perception is that this is a good thing. So as you kind of ruminate on that, I'm going to pass this back to my cohort, and I believe that Dale is going to jump in next.
That was great, Gail. That really kind of said it all there. It's that kind of like that thing, what one man's treasure is, or one man's garbage is another man's treasure. It is all relative. And I think both Gail and Cheryl spoke to that. And, I love what we teach in our philosophy, and we teach people how to think. And like Gail, or how Cheryl was talking about when she first came into our philosophy, and we talk about duality quite a bit, because we teach that there really is no duality. There is only one, and the human mind perceives and judges good and bad, and not to judge that we do that, because it's part of, it allows us to survive in our world. But it's also very good to be aware that we do that, because we can have a loosening of our consciousness when we get rigid in saying, well, that's bad and that's good, because then we can build up walls and hate and all that kind of stuff. So it's really good to have that awareness of that there really is only one, and to be able to take that step back from our little minds that are doing the judging and go to that bigger awareness that is within all of us. And I really appreciate you, Cheryl, for bringing this topic. And yes, you delivered provocative and mind expansion, which is great. I liked the question that, and I think I know who submitted the question, but I love the question because it really begs us to ask the question: are there transcendent qualities that do go beyond duality. And we talk about, we talk about the qualities of God as love, as peace, as joy, beauty, all that good stuff. So when we say that, and we're coming from that place, are we saying that sure, we can say there's an opposite to a love, there's an opposite to beauty, but when we're talking about it as spirit, do we go to a transcendent place where there is only that, and we're able to see only that in all of our life experiences without having to go to the opposite? I think I'm just going to toss that out to you guys to contemplate. So that is my share for this moment.
I think I go next. I tell you what, Cheryl, you have definitely opened up a Pandora's box on this one. I tell you, that's the reason why I think we were a little bit quiet, not jumping in, because there's the key word that you talked about today is perception. And I think that that's what I'd like to focus on, not about beauty or good or bad, because it is truly the perception. As you were talking, I'm thinking about, okay, I find a rose beautiful, but there's a rose called Peace that I absolutely love the colors that it has. But yet there's one called Abraham Lincoln, which is your typical nice red rose. It's nice as well. But to me, the Peace is, I'm more attracted to that. But to be an absolutist and say now, because I find that Peace, this particular rose, is beautiful, I'm not saying that the Abraham Lincoln rose is ugly. And so that brought in a whole bunch of thoughts into my head. And when you were talking about the positive electrons and protons and positives and negatives, yes, there's positives and negatives, but two positives don't come together. Two negatives don't come together. You need opposites. And what happens when you have the opposites? They attract. They complete a circuit. When you talk about electricity, again, with the analogies, I love the way the secrets of the universe are all around us. If you expand your mind and truly think about what you're looking at and observing. So circuitry, electricity, the lights in your house, the way a car works is the flow of energy. So when you talk about life and death and somebody making their transition, how we talk about, people talk about death and it's the end of life. No, it's a transition. That's why we call it, because it's not the end of life. It's just a change of life. Because what happens as things perish, they decompose and they become energy and food for something else, such as plants and foliage and fungi, which then become food for other things of higher, what we would consider higher forms of life or more complicated. And so this circle of life we talk about. So now you talk about circuitry in a basic sense of electricity, but then how life operates mimics the circle that is completed by electricity, the circuitry, the circle of life. It goes on and on. And so the idea of looking at something that's beautiful and calling it beautiful, and then something that's ugly. Let's say take something that everybody doesn't, that we can agree on at this point, that when I talk about a housefly, people go, huh, okay, what are we going to do with a housefly? We got to get rid of them. They do all this. But have you ever seen a macro, a zoomed up photo of like a fly's eye and how precise it is, and the colors of the rainbow are there, that when you look at it from in that standpoint on that microscopic level, it's truly beautiful. I mean, it is something marvelous to see. So maybe as you go through life and you are deeming something good and something bad, as you focus more on the actual subject, you can begin to see that those lines of the vision get blurred. Just like when you zoom into a photograph and things start to get a little bit fuzzy or pixelated, those definite lines of good and bad, right or wrong, ugly, beautiful, left, right, up, down, forwards, backwards, it all gets blurred to where, again, what Dale was talking about. There's only life, there's only spirit, the continuity, the one thing that is in constant flow through everything, through your life, through my life, the ups and downs, like the ebb and flow of the ocean. The tide comes in, the tide goes out. Depending upon who you are and what your circumstance is, that's either a good thing or a not so good thing. But everyone lives in constant motion, so our perceptions and our views of what's good and bad, ugly, beautiful, are in a constant state of flux. So as I turn this over to, as I look here, raise your hand who's going next. I can't read that stuff. Maybe it would be beautiful if I got some glasses. All right, so that's what I'm going to say. So anyway, it's all about perception. And again, Cheryl, thank you so much. This is a deep subject, and I'm willing to go down the rabbit hole.
Okay, I'm following you, my friend. Okay, so here I'm going to go pull it in a new direction. So I know a lot of our listeners, and I think all of you guys know Abraham Hicks, and they talk, or she, whatever the collective talks about, that we're here to experience contrast, and I really dig on that topic, because if you want to look at life and our experience here as an adventure, as some people think that we made a decision as souls to come here onto this plane of existence and just experience all of this stuff here. And whenever I'm kind of going through my challenge in life, I go to that place of saying, well, I signed up for this adventure, and I'm open to experiencing the allness of it. And so I get into the beauty, and then because my mind is saying that's beautiful, and then my mind is saying, well, that's not beautiful. And I look at it as an observer. I look at my how I'm perceiving as an observer, but rather than needing to get funky with myself or judging myself for looking at something that way, I just say, wow, isn't this interesting how I see this that way and that way? But being able to just see it is all life. And what's cool, and I think Cheryl alluded to this, that and it might be part of that yin yang symbol, that yin yang symbol, which is I think it's a Chinese symbol. You see it all over the place. It's the circle with like the squiggly thing, and you've got one side's black and one side's white. And I think within the black and the white is another circle that has the opposite color, which just means that everything has everything in it. So what Cheryl said earlier, that the beauty has the ugly has the beauty, because it really is just defined by perception. But going to that place of bigness, it really is just one expression of life coming in different ways. And I think it's really important that we just look at life as not really being black and white at all. Nothing. That's my perception. I don't think anything is black and white. I think everything has color to it, and everything has different ways of looking at it. And I guess to put it into practice, what this means for me, I guess at the end of the day, is when I catch myself getting real judgy about something or saying this is that and putting it in its box, for me to take that step backward and say nothing's in a box at all except for what I'm thinking is in a box. And for me to expand my perception of what I'm looking at, to be able to see that everything does have goodness, like the story Gail said. I love that story. There's good in everything. And Emma Curtis Hopkins, who is one of the female New Thought leaders from like the late 1800s, she talked about that as well. She said everything is good, and even the person who is thinking about committing a crime of thievery, they're coming from good intent because they want some good in their lives. So they're actually coming from a place that is providing them with goodness. So I just think you're loosening us up, Cheryl, to really see life differently. And I appreciate that. So I think Gail follows me.
Thank you, Dale. And thank you for introducing contrast. And I think where I'm going to go is talk a little bit about the value of contrast and how contrast serves us, and what it might be like to live in an environment where there isn't any contrast. So first, I think I'm going to talk about what is contrast, just in case people in our audience aren't familiar with that term. So for me, contrast is anything that I don't like. That's how I know it's contrast. Anything that doesn't feel good, anything that I'm experiencing kind of as a negative mood, that's my clue that what I'm experiencing is some contrast. So many of us are not good at knowing what we do want, but we are good at knowing what we don't want. So identifying contrast can be a really helpful tool to get clarity on what it is that we really, really want, because that's the key, right? Is knowing and feeling what it is that we really want. So when someone's not nice to you, contrast, you want them to be nice, right? And when you don't feel like you have enough money, contrast, you want more money. And if you're having health problems, contrast, you want to be healthy, right? So contrast causes you to really clarify your preferences. And so with this explanation, how does contrast serve you? Well, sometimes you can't know what you do want, or it's really hard to know what you really want unless you know what you don't want. And although it doesn't feel good, contrast is actually sometimes a really good thing, because out of contrast and the variety of life experiences, you get to decide, you get to choose what you prefer. So one way to look at contrast is that it launches desire. And we all know that desire is step one in the creation process. So contrast causes you to focus your energy more clearly. And from that focus, you can find a new awareness and your new preferences. And the more clearly you know what you want, the more easily and quickly it manifests, right? So what would it be like to live in an environment without contrast? Well, sometimes I think it would be really nice to be in an environment where there are no problems at all, and all I can see is what I want. But guess what? What I realize from our teaching is that expansion cannot come from that. You see, I came into this physical body and you came into this physical body for growth and expansion. And contrast is a necessary component of that, because life is all about growing and expanding and alignment. So I'd suggest here that contrast is life-giving and it's essential to our expansion as an eternal being. Since you are all eternal, you don't want to run out of desires, and you don't want to run out of what causes desire either. So contrast causes you to focus yourself into a clear new awareness of what you really, really want. So from this, I kind of sense the challenge with contrast is just not to get fixated on it. It's meant to birth new desires. But I know when I stay fixated on a problem, I am not growing and I'm not going to evolve. So instead of freaking out when you're in the midst of a problem, which is contrast, learn to embrace it and realize it's an opportunity to fine-tune what you want and to expand your dreams. Just a different way to think about it. And just ask yourself, what do I really want in this situation? Shift it to what you really want. So the only way you can move out of contrast into a better feeling situation is to focus more on what you want. And through this desire and this clarity, the solution can and will come, because the universe always, always responds to your improved vibration by bringing more improvement. So once you've trained yourself not to dwell on the contrast, you'll find that contrast becomes fleeting, fewer and less severe over time. So just go with the flow and do what you can to feel good. It's how you feel. Keep your focus there on feeling good. I really believe that's the sweet spot in life, and it will only get better and better and better with practice and attention. So I think, William, you were going to jump in after me, or maybe I think it was Cheryl.
Yeah, it was me. There's a fabulous book I read. It's Dr. Wayne Dyer, and it's called Change Your Thoughts and Change Your Life. And he's the one that really expounded on what this book is all about, is the 81 verses of the Tao, translated into a more modern language or a more modern way to perceive it. And one of the things that he said about living the wholeness of life, that everything that's in it, it says, enter the world of oneness with an awareness of the propensity to compartmentalize everything as good or bad or right or wrong. Beauty and ugly are standards of the physical world, not of the Tao, not of spirit. God doesn't sit here. I just don't see this, sitting here saying, okay, you're beautiful and you're ugly. I mean, there is no, every creature, everything that is created by God, because it is known as perfection, it is perfect just the way it is. Whatever your orientation, whatever your belief system, however you are showing up in the world, that is what it's all about not knowing that there is that, as he calls it, the paradoxal unity. It is still unity, even though the paradox is that it has to have both in order to be the unity. You can't separate them out. So that's what, I guess, what Dr. Dyer was trying to tell us, is that when you just come from the oneness, then you don't define beauty or ugly. You just are. You're just living the effortless life of just being. And he one of the things he said, so imagine you're an otter and you're just living in your otterness, and that you're not ugly, you're not pretty, you're not beauty, you're not any bad or good or anything. You're just being. You are just existing in a harmony that has created this perfect environment for you as an otter. Well, stop and think about that. Is that, as a higher consciousness beings that we are, don't you believe that God just wants our world to just be living in our otterness at all moments, whatever it is? I just love that thought that he put out there about that. And so, who wants to go next? I think it's going to be William. Unmute, Cheryl.
Oh, that was a good one. Ha ha. Oh, thank you for volunteering me. I'm just taking it all in, and I love what Gail was talking about, the contrast, and it truly is. And Cheryl, what you said, all life is beautiful, and perception, all life is good, all life is bad. But it's all in the contrast of who's the observer at that moment. Mm-hmm. Gail was talking about the story of the baby bird falling down. Well, I tell you what, that contrast, that baby bird was saying, uh-oh, this is a bad thing happening. Contrast is the doe was thinking, tasty. But that's it. Don't take anything personal. See and observe what life has to offer. Experience life as only you know how to do. Because my experience of life is perfect for me. But it may not be perfect for any of my cohorts here or anybody else out there. But that's fine. But that's the perfection of life. And when I can see that perfection in me and recognize the perfection in everyone else, in all life, not just people, but all life, I can just be thankful that I have the knowledge that I am the complete expression of divine life expressing. And when I come to that realization, like the Tao, like the Dalai Lama, like anybody, it's recognizing that all life, regardless of the perception, is beautiful, is perfect, but more importantly, it is harmony. Especially now when you see all around you what you think are dualism and chaos. When you live from a spiritual standpoint and understand that that contrast is what allows you to grow and to expand so the spirit can become more of itself, you then realize that you don't take it personal. You observe it, you take it in, and you grow from that standpoint. So I guess the point is, how much are you willing to grow today?
Mm.
And I'd like to turn it over for some final comments from the lovely ladies. See if they have anything to say. Dale, go ahead.
I know. I really, the last couple times we met, it really dawned on me that you are the last man standing with and what I mean, it's such a William thing, right? William surrounded by three beautiful, wise women, right? We attract, right? It's your consciousness attracts it.
Oh.
I just wanted to give a comment regarding a comment that we received from Dawn, and I know Dawn very well. She's a wonderful friend of mine, and she said that beauty is beyond appearance. Here we go. There's so much to beauty than appearance, and William started to speak to that. Kathy Ann Lewis, who is the senior minister up in Seattle, I was at a workshop with her once, and she talked about beauty being like what Dawn says, that beauty, as far as like going into the soul level, is really about order and balance and harmony. And I agree with that. It really, when that feeling state of harmony comes into be, that's what beauty is all about. And I think that Gail spoke to it as well. When we have those contrast experiences, what is it we want to call forth? We want to bring order, harmony back into our lives, which also equates with beauty. So I wanted to do a shout out to Dawn and just bring that into the mix. So I don't know who's next. I think Cheryl, as our leader today, you are wrapping up, it looks like.
Well, I'm going to just give you a challenge for the day. This is just something. Do the spiritual oneness today. But if you run into an opportunity where you either have to explain yourself or defend yourself for whatever action or whatever you're doing, why not just step back and just observe instead? Just don't feel the need to explain yourself or anything. Just let you recognize your feelings and everything that is going on around you and how you're feeling about it, but then just not feeling the need to jump in and make the effort to change somebody else's mind about whatever perception they're having. Just allow them to feel like they feel, and not allow, but also like William said, don't take it personally, just to keep that balance. And that's what we're talking about here. All of it is one, all of it is in harmony. So live in the harmony. That's all I'm offering today. Just live in the harmony. And so I guess we're about ready to close. And who's closing today? William.
Yes, thank you so very much. So I believe that maybe everyone has talked about any final comments. At this time, I'd like to start doing announcements. If any of the ladies have anything they'd like to say briefly, go ahead. All right, Gail.
Thank you. Thank you. So I would like to invite everybody here to discover the extraordinary miracles that happen when just a handful of people come together for intentional prayer. Please join us next Tuesday. It's March 30th at 6:30 p.m. for our next Restorative Intention Circle. We look so forward to seeing you there. Thanks, William.
You are quite welcome. And that is always a great source of inspiration, knowing that regardless of what's going on in your life, that you have the ability to affect change, especially with those of like mind. And that's a beautiful thing. So anyway, as we wrap this day down, every single day, you know the routine, there's something going on, and it's usually spirit fingers. But Monday we have Dr. James Mellon, who is Work It Out Working with the Law, and that's at 10 o'clock. Also, Monday, Dr. Laura is continuing her Beyond Limits from 6 to 8:30. Tuesday, I'm gonna start calling Tuesday Grief Day, because Gail has her Grief Loss Transformation show at 10 a.m. But then also Michael Kukuru has his grief support group. I believe it's at 5 to 6. So that is a wonderful day to deal with it and to get over it, that grief. And I'm not saying it in that sense of just belittling it, because I'm not. But the idea and understanding what grief is, briefly for myself, I can tell you that grief is a recognition of the beauty and the energy that you had with that other person, or that way of life, or that experience you've had. And when you can focus on the beauty that and the connection that relationship created, it is a beautiful thing. But Reverend Gail Morton, you know, she's going to help you get through that and understand it, and to incorporate grief into your life to where you can take that next step. Anyway, that is Gail on Tuesday. Wednesday, you know, you've got us here at 10 o'clock, and that's just a wonderful thing. Thursday, Dale with her class and her Sacred Circle from 9 to 10:30, I believe it is. And then social happy hour with Cheryl and myself. You know, bring your cocktail, bring your soda, bring your attitude, bring your fun, bring your laughter. It's just an hour of just getting together with some silliness, and a time to just enjoy one another's energy. Saturdays is our meditation day, when we have our meditation, so that's wonderful. Friday, actually, our very own Jeff Harris has his little show that he's been doing for the past couple weeks. Spirituality at ground level. I kind of like that. You know, what better way than to see his insights? And he's like Waldo. You never know where he's going to be. So he's going to be somewhere in the valley doing his filming. But anyway, so that's what's going on. But also this, what we do here at the center is to be of service for you, the viewer, to help you out in whatever way that we can. And through your spiritual tithing and donations, you give us the opportunity to reach more and more people with programs such as these and the other programs that we have throughout the week. With your support and financial contributions, you are saying yes to this message of love, compassion. You are saying yes to life. You are saying yes to the universe, that you are a part of this, and that you want what is in your heart to be expanded upon. And by your donations, you help that message get out into the world. And so right now, I'd like to say thank you for that. With that, I'd also like to thank Swing Point Media for everything that they do day in and day out. And with that, I'd like to just allow us to be grateful for what has just transpired. And I'd like to do a closing prayer. So just allow yourself to just allow your seat, wherever that may be, just to support you. And take a deep breath in. And allow it out as you just allow that seat to support you. Recognizing that that seat, that chair, is nothing less than the totality of spirit supporting you. Supporting itself, because you, I, everything is nothing but energy, which is nothing less than the action of spirit. So right now, I recognize that all life is that life. And I recognize that that life is my life now. And in that recognition, I recognize that it is the truth of all that is here. And in that truth, I'd like to recognize the contrast of life. I love that word right now, contrast. All contrast is nothing but spirit acting upon itself. And recognizing the beauty of that mindset, that energy, that fact of life. I recognize my own divinity, separate yet not, inclusive yet its own divine expression. I recognize that beauty, that divinity in all life. I recognize it in myself. I recognize it in all that is here. And in that recognition, I say yes to beauty. I say yes to joy. And I most definitely say yes to gratitude, which fills my heart. So as I allow the rest of this day to unfold perfectly, seeing the contrast, the beauty, the spirit in action in all, I release my word as law, knowing it is done right here and right now. And together we do say, and so it is. Thank you all so very much. You have a wonderful day. Bless you.